In this world, there are creatures known as Pokemon. Wondrous creatures that help their trainers, regardless be they good or evil. Pokemon themselves are inherently not evil by nature. They have a strong sense of loyalty and wish to help their trainers, regardless of the task they might be doing. At least, this was how it was before a dark force used an ancient ritual to turn the rules of the world on its head. Pokemon, who had trainers, remained loyal to them. But the wild Pokemon? Now, the wild Pokemon, who didn't have trainers, became more wild and feral in nature. This was the biggest change. It gave birth to a new generation, a generation of Pokemon slayers. Among them were 4 Pokelords, the strongest of this generation. Despite having the aid of Pokemon who had been captured, a large amount of wild Pokemon grew exponentially stronger, meaning that the more legendary and unknown Pokemon had to be slain if they were unable to be captured. These 4 ruled the regions of the North, East, South and West, were given their positions after slaying the most Pokemon. Of course, they were looking for a way to reverse the rules of the world, back to what they were. The Slayer of the North was known for wearing an armour made from the hide of a Frostrex, the Ice Dragon Pokemon. Once a graceful and helpful breed of Pokemon that would make trails in the winter ice and snow so people wouldn't get lost. However, now they lay in ambush, hidden in the ice and snow, waiting to take down any unsuspecting prey. That was until the Slayer of the North appeared and took over, as she personally hunted down the species to a handful, making the last of them part of her forces. The armour she wears is a reminder to the last Frostrexes not to disobey her in future. It is rumoured that if this Pokemon could be trained properly, it could rival that of legendary Pokemon such as Articuno or Latios. Perhaps this is why the Slayer of the North has kept a few, while taking the strongest of them as her personal Pokemon pet. Either way, only a few of these Pokemon have been trained. Most are fearful of this fierce creature. The Slayer of the West, much like the Slayer of the North, and the other Slayers, wore an armour made out of powerful and dangerous Pokemon. That Pokemon was Scorpion, a poison steel type with a passion for fighting. Before the rules of the world changed, this Pokemon was often known as the sparring Pokemon. Scorpion was often seen teaching the pre-evolved version, Poisting, to prepare them for life once they do evolve into a Scorpion. This training would mainly involve intensive combat. Over time, the shells of these Pokemon became tougher and harder. The more intensive the sparring, the stronger the shell would be when evolving into a Scorpion. This has made many trainers attack these Pokemon in order to gain one of their strongest armors possible. However, this is also why many, well, almost all have failed and met their end. With such a strong shell, how easy would it be to slay one of these Pokemon? Of course, being a poison-type Pokemon, Scorpion and its evolutionary line contain a potent poison, and that was before becoming superpowered as wild Pokemon with the rules changing in this world. For smaller Pokemon and most humans, the poison is fatal. Even to those of their own kind, it is fatal. Even just touching the shell of these Pokemon for more than a few seconds can lead one to death. Of course, there are exceptions, and the Slayer of the West is one of them. Not only did she manage to slay a Scorpion, despite its super tough shell, she's also made it into an armour that still has the effect of being poisonous to the touch. The Slayer of the West was not born with a resilience to poison. Instead, she built up an immunity by using a diluted version of the poison from a Poisting until she was immune before slaying a Scorpion and repeating the process. Now she can wear the armour without any ill effects. In the East is the Slayer of Rainbows, a rather unique and deceiving name for a Slayer, but it's one that is fitting. Her armour was made from the Pokemon Peggyeti, a flying unicorn Pokemon with a rather unique ability. This Pokemon can absorb damage and power up its special attack. It's often following the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh, flying in and out of the rainbows generated by its wings. Often found on high mountain peaks, this Pokemon was once a kind and peaceful one. Now they are fearless raiders of the sky, swooping down and attacking those who venture into their territory. Many make it out, although heavily injured by this Pokemon, but a few are not so lucky. The Slayer of the East, also known as the Slayer of Rainbows, earned her title by slaying several Peggyeti. Once this Pokemon was made into an armour, it had a strange effect that aided the Slayer of the East. Not only did its wings allow the wearer to fly, but the damage-absorbing ability carried over. This meant the wearer could take several powerful attacks without receiving any damage. Although not infinite, this enabled the Slayer of the East to be the vanguard in battle or a trump card against super strong Pokemon. The reason the Slayer of the East is known as the Slayer of Rainbows is because she's managed to take out a Ho-Oh after flying through a rainbow it created and surprise attacking it. After negating its damage and getting a lucky blow against the legendary beast, down to pure luck, it earned her the title Slayer of Rainbows. The last of the 4 Pokemon Slayers is the Slayer of the South. She is perhaps the most famous of the Slayers. She is the only one to slay a monolith Pokemon, a gigantic Pokemon that took us several months with hundreds of trainers to beat it. It was a battle of attrition and was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The Pokemon, known as Grandidragon, a draconic monolith Pokemon, somewhat similar to a Giratina in appearance. Perhaps this is a related Pokemon species or a regional variant of Giratina? It had been made clear that a single strike of its tail could cause devastating earthquakes. This Pokemon has been rumoured to have brought down a number of ancient civilizations. Despite this, the Slayer of the South's determination and perseverance finally paid off, and her name went down as the Monolith Slayer, giving her the top spot of the strongest of the Slayers. Her armour had earthy colours, while keeping some of the sharp red spikes of the Pokemon. She even wears a half mask in honour of this fallen Pokemon. Its tail was made into a mace that could cause the earth to shake when it hit the ground or a solid object. This gave her an advantage in battle, causing most Pokemon to be affected by the shockwave or to be knocked off balance, often shifting the tide. These 4 Slayers have helped turn the tide of chaos that happened when the rules of the world changed. Despite all odds, they've turned the tide, helping save humanity from the onslaught of wild Pokemon, forever etched in the throes of history. Okay, so small, tiny twist on this one. There's going to be no December redraw. I've decided, due to how manic Christmas is and just the whole fact of this redraw being so far into December, there wouldn't be enough time for everybody. I'm not doing one for December. I'm actually shifting it to January. So I will give a theme shortly for the redraw, but I decided that it would be better to stretch this one out so you guys get a bit longer. With that said, the details of the January 2025 community redraw are: design a fantasy monster or creature, include a headshot and a body shot, the name, any abilities, and some background lore information you think might be useful. The submission deadline is the 17th of January 2025, and I look forward to seeing what you all come up with. All the designs submitted were amazing. I wish I could have drawn more of the FAKEMON. There's a few that have been coming around the rounds a few times. I will be completely honest, I did want to draw some of them, but I left it up to a Wheel of Names, Wheel of Fate, whatever you want to call it, and these were the 4 that got selected. Hopefully they'll show up in future of the next one. And just in case you think I've forgotten to mention, special thank you to the winning submissions for today's community redraw. I haven't, I just shifted it around a bit. So we have Galaham 19 with Frostrex. We have Apple Flavors with Scorion. Minecraft Transformers with Pega Yatia. And MLG Flash Hybrid God with Granny Dracon. On that note, that's it for today's video. So thank you all for watching.